I'll tell you where we've got to get back to classical liberalism, and that is that we've got to have more exchanges of ideas, not be judgmental of people who have a different cultural or social viewpoint. Recognize that you can't cancel people or police language or tell people exactly how they should express themselves, and be more willing to mix it up and have argument and have real debate. And to me, if there's one challenge the Democratic Party has had, is sometimes we came off as condescending or unwilling to debate people on the merits of the idea, and we just throw out labels, and that ultimately is not persuasive. And so you can have a progressive politics, which are, in my view, are based on the vast income inequality and lack of economic opportunity for people, but we have to be willing to debate the ideas.
You describe yourself as a progressive. I was a progressive. I was on the Young Turks network. I mean, I was definitely part of that thing. I describe myself now. I still believe that I'm a classical liberal. But I think liberals and progressives have very little to do with each other. Unfortunately, I think that the old school liberal, I think someone like JFK would be in essence, a modern Republican. I think he would be a Trump-like Republican now and would not like what the Democrat Party has turned into. Part of that is that I at this point, I don't
certainly
think
not on USAID though, because John F. Kennedy
he started
USAID.
He started it, but I don't think he wanted this radical lack of transparency that we've had throughout the agency. But that aside for a moment, do you see this tension? I mean, when you're walking around Congress, do you see this tension between the more progressive wing and sort of the woke wing versus whoever might be kind of an old school liberal at this point? And by the way, I don't think there are many. Maybe Fetterman. I don't know who else is left, really.
I'll tell you where we've got to get back to classical liberalism, and that is that we've got to have more exchanges of ideas, not be judgmental of people who have a different cultural or social viewpoint. Recognize that you can't cancel people or police language or tell people exactly how they should express themselves, and be more willing to mix it up and have argument and have real debate. And to me, if there's one challenge the Democratic Party has had, is sometimes we came off as condescending or unwilling to debate people on the merits of the idea, and we just throw out labels, and that ultimately is not persuasive. And so you can have a progressive politics, which are, in my view, are based on the vast income inequality and lack of economic opportunity for people, but we have to be willing to debate the ideas.
Right. So, okay, so let's debate some of those ideas. So vast income inequality. I mean, people seem to be upset that a billionaire is now trying to make government more efficient. You're up in Silicon Valley. You have a lot of the billionaires who were standing behind Donald Trump that day. To me, bringing in people who are innovators, who are job creators, who are literally, paving the roads to new industries and AI and all of these things. And people know I'm a big sci-fi guy, so I'm always worried about AI too. But the point is, we're in this technological revolution. I like having all of these people as part of the government. I think they create jobs and create wealth and all of these things. And it seems to me that the progressive view is, if you have something, if you've created or you have money, you're automatically bad, which is why they keep bringing up billionaire over and over again.
No, I don't think, well, certainly my view is not that wealth generation is bad, and I have not said let's outlaw billionaires. What I have said is that there are a lot of people in this country who have been left out. Why? Because jobs went offshore, partly of trade policy. You had factories hollowed out. You had a lot of private equity come in and they liquidated these companies for dividends. You had them engage in stock buybacks. You have lower corporate tax rates overseas. And I am for a government that's going to rebuild factories in America, that's going to rebuild places like Johnstown and Milwaukee. And if you want to have some business leaders involved in that reconstruction, I'm fine with it. But I'm not, what I don't want is business leaders dismantling important institutions of government that are there for the working and middle class.
Right. So again, I think our main disconnect seems
Yes.
to be you think that those institutions are important, and I don't. I think that's probably for the most part. We might, if we sat with every institution, we might be able to whittle to that. But some of what you just said, you must agree with Trump on redoing some of these trade policies and getting some of.
I agree with a lot of his diagnosis that we made a colossal mistake in this country of letting steel, aluminum manufacturing leave. I agree with him that NAFTA was a mistake. I agree with him that allowing China into the World Trade Organization was a mistake. I agree with him on what he's done on the tariffs on steel and aluminum recently. Where I disagree with him is that that's sufficient. I think you need federal financing to help build these new factories. I think you need an investment in the workforce. I think you need directed economic investment in communities left out. Rubio and I have a bill on this, actually, to use the federal government to have economic development. And that's how we built from Hamilton to Lincoln to FDR. And my view is that Trump's prescription is incomplete.
Do you think it's possible that we just don't need government as much as we used to? That now, because of technology, because of the way we live and the ability to travel more and the size of the country, that maybe 100 years ago, as we were going through our Industrial Revolution, we needed the government to do an awful lot. And there's just ways now to do things that the government is not particularly good at. And that might be some of the tension we're seeing right now.
I think for certain types of innovation, you may not need government as much in terms of the development of AI and the development of quantum computing. A lot of that innovation is happening in the private sector. But where you do need government is to scale factories, to scale production. That's huge capital costs. And those are not often borne by venture capitalists in the private sector. What you do need government for is the uses of AI. Are we going to use AI to cure disease? Or are we just going to use it for the next chat box? Where you do need government, in my view, is to make sure everyone has health care and has decent public schools. So I am a big believer that a lot of innovation is taking place, technology is taking place in the private sector. 85% of jobs are in the private sector. But if we're going to compete with China, we need a strong, smart government, not a communist government like China, but a smart, strategic government.
So where are you at on schooling? I'm actually not totally sure. Are you for school choice? I mean, we're seeing the Department of Education kind of be hacked away at the moment. I'm completely fine with that. Where do you fall when it comes to public? Because you just mentioned public education.
I'm not for school choice, but let me answer on the Department of Education first, then we can debate school choice.
Sure.
When you say that you want the Department of Education eliminated, are you talking about the funding in the education department or something else? Because there's funding that goes, for example, to schools in working class neighborhoods under Title I. There's funding that goes to families who have kids with special needs. There's funding that goes to Pell Grants for working class kids who want to go to college or vocational school. Would you keep that funding or not?
Well, first, I would say you really do have to look at all of it appropriately, which is what we're doing right now, because just saying we're funding something doesn't mean that the money's being used appropriately or anything else. So that, I think we would agree on that part. So that would be the first part. The second part I would say is I don't know that it needs to be done at the federal level. I think that that's what most people are realizing right now, that if I happen to live in Florida, we have an extremely good, we have no state income tax and have extremely good schools, which it used to be the joke of the country, Florida, because it was all the old people who weren't paying taxes and the schools weren't good. But DeSantis has largely changed that. I think the more you do things at local levels and remove the bureaucracy here, the better things will be for people.
Well,
so I don't think that there should, I wouldn't make the argument that you should have no directive. You could have a basic directive from the federal government that there are basic things we should be trying to teach, but I think they should be guidelines for the states more than forcing everybody to have one type of education. But I would like to talk about the school choice thing as well.
Sure. But we need federal funding, right? I mean, first of all, I don't know how much Florida. My guess is Florida has a lot of schools in working class neighborhoods that also get federal funds. But Florida is a fairly rich state. A lot of people from Silicon Valley, after they make their money, or New York or other places, go there. The Naples.
I'm old in Florida now.
I go down to Florida. I say, what do they do? And they just say, no, they have money or something. They all come for the warm weather. So, but what about states that aren't as wealthy? You need federal funding, and in the whole Department of Education funding is maybe 3-4% of the federal budget. To me, that's an investment in our human potential. I'm a product of public schools. I went to a great public school. I'm sure they benefited in ways from funding from different streams. And to me, that's such a product of American democracy. Now, the school choice, I want to hear your opinion. The challenge I have with it is 90% of kids in this country go to public school. And I am for charter schools within public schools. I'm for having competition within public schools. What I have a problem with is when tax dollars get sucked out of the competition within public schools and go to private schools, then I think you're hurting the other 90%. Have the competition within public schools.
Right. I mean, I'm very big on school choice, and we have twin 2-year-olds that I'm not sure where they're going to go or anything else. I think it likely will be homeschooled or pod or something like that, despite the good schools in Florida. But I would be much more for just a tax credit to parents to decide whether it's going to be the public, if the public school is no good, then don't send them to the public school. And then everyone has to make their choices accordingly. And then you do either the charter school or the private school or whatever else. But do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm
I think
48.
You're 48. So I'm 48. I was going to say, I think we're about the same age. And it's interesting because you said that you're a product of public schools. I am as well. All my schools, and I went to
Where did you go?
SUNY Binghamton for college, State University of New York. And my elementary school, junior high school, all public schools. And I think, and when I heard you say that, that's why I was asking your age, is I think things worked, basically. If you're our age, if you're Gen X, and I think that's partly why Elon is involved in this now, the Gen X people were the last generation that the system basically worked. We didn't get taught crazy things. And did you get taught crazy? You grew up in Silicon Valley?
I grew up in Philadelphia,
In
right
Philadelphia.
outside Bucks County.
Okay.
I learned about William Penn.
Right.
And I learned about our Constitution and Valley Forge, where George Washington had his army. We had a great education.
So what do you make of that diagnosis? That I would say that for our generation, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And growing up in New York, we probably had very similar public educations. That would be very, very fundamentally different than what the average kid at a public school in Philly or in Long Island, where I grew up, is learning now.
Look, I think we need to do better in public education? Absolutely. But I don't have a sense that there's been some massive decline. I mean, I'd have to look at the scores and other evaluation. But I think that public education, you still have a lot of great teachers. They're still working very, very hard. Now, I'm of a view that everyone needs to learn English. Everyone needs to learn about American history. And we should be teaching that the history of this country, it's a great country. Of course, teach also about the challenges we've had with slavery and Jim Crow, because we teach honestly.
Of course,
but
we do.
But my view is that the public schools are still working, but we need to do better and make them better in the 21st century.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.